to order the September 8th, 2021 Select Board meeting at 5:31. Don Holgate will not be joining us, so right now it is just Matt, Melissa, and Christy. So I'll start by reading the remote script.
Christy, can
Yes.
we do NRTA?
Yep, I just have to read the remote script first.
Okay, yep. Thank you.
So as a preliminary matter, this is Christy Ferrantella, Vice Chair of the Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Melissa Murphy.
Present.
Matt Fee.
Here.
And Christy Ferrantella here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Paula Leary.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
Here.
Janet Schulte.
Here.
Jeff Carlson.
Here.
Eric O'Meale.
In attendance?
Noah Carberg.
Here.
Roberto Santa Maria.
Here.
And Stephen Murphy.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Emily Molden.
Here, thank you.
And Karen Maycumber.
Here.
And Erica, I forgot to mention you and staff.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, so this open meeting of the Select Board and NRTA is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of, I think this is the old one, this is of March 12, 2020. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement for the open meeting law to have all meetings in public and physical locations. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. You could find the posted agenda materials for this meeting, which allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Select Board and NRTA Board are convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website. And I think that is everything. Just some business ground rules. I, as the Vice Chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the Chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, and motions. Please hold until your name is called. And for any response, please wait until the Chair or Vice Chair yields the floor to you and states your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So I was hoping Jason might come on by the time we got through all of that, but we will start by opening the NRTA meeting of September 8th.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Roberto, congratulations. I haven't seen you. So exciting, though. I just wanted to say that to him. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. And none. Approval of minutes for the May 19th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. I wasn't there, but I'll second so we can approve them.
and by,
Thanks, Matt.
by roll call vote, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella's aye.
Okay, thank you. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of a contract award to VTS of Mass Inc. for management service. And this is for the NRTA's fixed route, the wave, and the demand response, your island ride services. VTS has been doing this for a long time for both services. And I recommend the board to vote to award the contract for management service to VTS of Mass at the following prices. Year one, $73.43 an hour. Year two, $74.90 an hour. Year three, $76.40 an hour. Option year one, $77.92 an hour. And option year two, $79.48 an hour. The RFP will be incorporated as part of the contract, and authorize the chair to sign the contract, please.
So moved. Oh, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'll second it for discussion. Paula, for the benefit of the public, you describe the option years, what they are, and then I have another comment after.
Yep, it's a 3-year contract with 2 option years, so if we're happy and they're happy, we can extend to option year 1, and then following that, option year 2, so it turns it into a 5-year contract.
And do they have an option of backing out in year 4, or is it just on our side?
It's mutual.
All right, that's okay. That's number 1. Number 2 was that we're doing this, we're paying them per hour. Do we have control over the hours if we find that a route isn't going to be run and we're going to cut hours for any reason? We don't have to pay them, correct?
No, it's based on revenue hours, and it's per bus. So anything that we don't provide that was scheduled, or vice versa that we're providing that wasn't scheduled, would be at that same hourly rate or deduction of that hourly rate.
Right. And I think that's important for people to understand, because if we do still have, you have control of the budget in that manner if need be.
Yes, absolutely, Matt.
Thank you. So on that motion made by Melissa and seconded by Matt, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
and Christy Ferrantella, aye.
Okay, I have no other business before the board.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board for Paula? Seeing none, we'll close the NRTA meeting, and I will pass it over to Jason Bridges.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Paula. Sorry I'm late there. Computers never go down until minutes before you have to go on. Funny thing how that works. I'd like to call to order the select board meeting for September 8, 2021. There is one addition to the announcements, but otherwise there's no changes. For announcements, the select board meeting is being audio and video recorded. The second one is recognition of retiring Assistant Health Director Artel Crowley with 30 years of service to the town of Nantucket. Anybody like to speak on that?
Yes, unfortunately, Artel is not going to be able to join us today. He's actually already up in Maine enjoying his retirement, and he sends his regards. He says he doesn't have enough internet speed to be able to join on his Zoom. But he is, after 31 years this week, he is looking forward to retiring. He sends his thanks to everyone, and he really appreciates all the effort that everyone has given us and all the leeway you've given him throughout these years. He's really proud of all the work, and he let us know how sad it was to leave. He did let us know, but he is looking forward to to the next step in his life now. He and Alice are both happily retired in Maine. And I think, Erica, you have a little thing we're going to be sending him.
I do. Thank you. So we have a plaque that we are going to be sending to Artel in Maine to thank him for his 30 years plus of service. And I would just like to note that I remember when Artel started, which makes me feel really old, but I was only in high school, maybe like 14 or 15, working at the Sconset Market. And I remember we were really nervous because he was fresh, and he supposedly was like very tough and very strict, and we were all on like high alert for when the health director came. So it's just funny that I completely have a memory of him when he started, and he's always been great. So I'm sad to see him go.
Thank you, Erica. Matt, you had
Yeah, the same thing, Erica, except I'm older than you. So he's been inspecting me for even longer. And I will say he is always, well, he's going to be missed. He was always fair, and he would find a way to to make you do the right thing and to do it, so you felt good about it and he felt good about it. And I think he had that ability, and I think that's really important in that type of job. And so I think he will be missed.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Yes, he's already missed in our office, and we'll be, since this is recorded, we'll send him the recording.
Melissa?
Thanks. I just want to add, in my short time on serving on the Board of Health, Artel's depth of knowledge on how to protect our fragile ecosystems, and by way of making houses and businesses compliant, as well as just our community all around safer, is really going to be hard to replace. And I know you know that, Roberto, but I've really enjoyed getting to know him, and I hope he doesn't mind if we pick his brain once in a while, because you just can't learn everything Artel knows. So thank you, Artel, when you watch this, for your years of service.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other comments? Okay. Let's check over here. All right. Thank you, Roberto. Thanks everyone for your comments, and thank you, Artel. 30 years. Our next announcement, Janet, you going to walk us through that?
Yes, I am. I'm delighted to let you know that the Massachusetts Cultural Council has given the Nantucket Cultural District a 5-year renewal of its designation as a cultural district as part of the council. That keeps us in the community of cultural districts, of which there are nearly 50 now. But more importantly, for Nantucket, we changed the boundaries to include the African Meeting House, and by virtue of the fact that the Lynx takes passengers from Strait Wharf and the shipwreck shuttle comes to 25 Federal Street, we're also able to include the Egan Maritime Institute and the Shipwreck and Life-Saving Museum. So we've expanded our boundaries to include these important cultural assets into the district. There are lots of other exciting things coming along this fall about the cultural district, and this designation gives us a real boost to make that happen. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, Janet, can you give a brief overview of what does that designation give us, right?
It makes us part of a community of other cultural districts. We meet about once a month and share ideas and support each other. It brings the small grant of about $7,500. We have great, tremendous support from Remain Nantucket for a website, which we are redoing our website. It's a free marketing tool for all the nonprofit cultural organizations to list their activities and programs. That will be launched probably next spring. We're trying to be thorough, rather do it right than do it over. And we've got a great social media platform for getting information out about cultural activities. So we are trying to become the vibrant hub of everything Nantucket. There's a kitty.
Thank you, Janet. I know it's been a big, very advantageous for all the different cultural organizations to be on the same page, like you said, to share ideas, and everybody becomes stronger because of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next announcement is COVID vaccine clinics. We have them on the First Way School Administration site. They're Thursdays from 4:30 to 6:30 and Sunday from 12 to 2. You can just go online. If you just search COVID vaccine town of Nantucket, you'll find your way there for the full schedule. Did I miss anything there, Jericho?
No, but if I may very quickly just add one thing to it. The First Way clinics are not doing third doses. So if anyone is interested in doing third doses, please look at the town website, the same place you can find the location for the First Way Clinic, you can find a link to a type form that everyone will remember from the very early days of the vaccine process. We've dusted that off to help handle the intake and the screening process. So the third doses being done on Nantucket by the town are actually only for immunocompromised people, and they are not the booster shots you've been hearing about. They're just specifically aimed at people who have a condition or take medication which suppresses their immune system, and they need a second dose, or I'm sorry, a third dose to provoke a immediate immune response to prevent infection, which being immunocompromised, they would not be able to fight off.
Thank you, Jericho. That's great information. The next three items, Erica's going to walk us through.
Thanks. Let me just pull up the packet. So for the second week in a row, I believe, we are just announcing who the roads and right-of-way candidates are and the appointments for that seat that's available or vacant is next week. So the four applicants are David Wunderlich, Campbell Sutton, Bruce Watts, and Rob Ranney, and we thank them for putting their names into the pot for consideration. And that is pursuant to our select board committee appointment policy. Also, we still do have two committees that have vacancies on them, being the Agricultural Commission and the Cannabis Advisory Committee. So if anybody is interested in filling those seats, the Agricultural Commission needs bodies the most. They've got 4 vacancies out of 5 seats, and we would love to see that group get back off the ground and reconstituted. In the Cannabis Advisory Committee, one member was unable to continue through the extended 1 year that was added to the committee's term. So we are just looking for another person to fill that role. So that is that. And then for the road projects update, I'm going to share my screen quickly and everybody see that map?
Yep.
Okay, so we have a lot of projects going on this fall, winter, and into the spring. I'm going to try to break them down within departments. For the sewer department, we've got the continuation of the Surfside Road Sewer Improvements Project happening. That actually begins September 3rd, which is Monday. That project is a continuation of the spring project. And that is the one that has its night work Monday through Thursdays. And then Fridays between 9 and 2, they do the patch paving. So hopefully that will be wrapped up through November 19th. We also have the third sewer force main project on the horizon. We're expecting the bid openings to be on or around October 6th with a possible start around December. And that is going to be a big project. We're not sure yet if it's going to be multi-crews, if we're going to, maybe have a crew at the beginning, a crew at the end. So that's all to be determined in terms of the logistics of how that project's going to be working out. And then the sewer department also has a South Shore Road sewer extension, and that goes from the sewer plant on South Shore Road just past Trotter's Lane on Fairgrounds Road. Again, that's not even out to bid yet. Hopefully in January 2022, that'll happen. The airport has a water main extension. If you see on the map here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's these brown lines that are part of the airport water main extension project. So it's Skyline Drive, a portion of Monahanset Road, and then it comes onto the airport property across and then over to Matacasham Valley Road. That is going on with the water department. They are planning on starting November 1st, and it's anticipated to last about 142 days. So we're looking at an April or May wrap up date for that project. The DPW, we have been working with the DPW since the director left and trying to review all the various projects that were in the queue for DPW and prioritizing those. There is some sidewalk work that's being slated for this fall. Easy Street sidewalk from the new Land Bank Park to Cambridge Street. I'm sure most of you know that that sidewalk was just redone by the Land Bank contractor. It was not done to ADA requirements, and they will be responsible for the work to fix that. But there are also some ADA issues at the Easy Street Basin and going down to Cambridge Street. So that's going to be done there. It also includes the sidewalks around the town hall here at 16 Broad Street, the Athenaeum, an area on South Water Street by Lily Pulitzer, an area by the Jared Kaufman House, 5 Chestnut Street by Hotel Pippa, 9 India Street near Proprietors. And on the list that was in the packet, it said Stop and Shop. But I found out that that was not correct. It's actually Candle Street. It's this little section of Candle Street here, between Salem Street and Main Street. And it's that sidewalk on the west side where the shops are. So that will keep them busy doing the sidewalk work. For paving, Nantucket Road will be milled and overlaid from the DPW entrance 4,500 feet towards town. There's also going to be some paving at the DPW garage area and the landfill entrance driveway. And then there's also a section at Old South Road, kind of right in the area by the Enquirer and Mirror, near that new park that was built right at the Rotary on Old South Road. And that's to fix some issues with the drainage there and the puddling, and so that'll clean that up. And then some other projects under the DPW. I think everybody remembers that we had the North Liberty Street area project going on with sewer and water for the last 1.5 years. They just finished in the spring. And that was supposed to have a drainage component, and that didn't occur. So we are just still figuring out whether or not we can move forward with the drainage component at this time. Otherwise, we need to potentially look at doing the final pave. Right now, that area was paved, but it was only a base coat. And so that is something that we are determining internally in terms of how to proceed with that project. We had hoped that the Washington Street and Francis Street intersection widening would be happening. That is currently to be determined. The plans still are not done, and that hasn't gone out to bid, or there's no timeline for that. Waite Drive construction, so that's that road that goes between Tacoma Way and 2 Fairgrounds Road. That has been under construction for a couple of months now, and that project is moving forward and going well. And then some bike path maintenance to do crack sealing. And that actually, on the list, I had it as under review, but I learned today that that actually began in Nantucket for the Nantucket bike path, and that is supposed to actually be wrapping up today. And then they're going to move on to the Milestone Road bike path and the Pulpus Road bike path. Each of the Milestone Road and the Pulpus bike paths are going to take about 1.5 days each. I did learn that for the Nantucket Road, they have to do a specific, it's called a deep fog sealing process. Please don't ask me the specifics. I'm not 100% on that, but it after you apply it, it becomes slippery. So they're gonna have to shut down sections of the bike path to do that. And so we're in the middle of figuring out traffic, what do we do with the bikers and everything like that, just to make sure it's safe and make sure we have police detail if that's available. For the water department, I'm starting to call it the water department instead of Wanacomit Water. It's hard to make that transition, but I'm like trying to be really cognizant of that. Washington Street water main replacement, we did have that project on the schedule for quite some time, but that is going to be on hold for 2 reasons. One, until the Washington Street and Francis Street intersection widening is scheduled, because it doesn't make sense to do one and not do the other at the same time. Also, the water company is going to be potentially expending some capital for water service west of the airport due to PFAS. And so they are just putting that on hold for now. I already reviewed the water main extension that the airport is doing. And then for other projects in the town, we do have this town proposed water main expansion project west of the airport. And that is on the map. If you see these areas in green down here, this is PFAS related. This was not part of the airport's project scope, but it is something that our PFAS work group has been looking at and thinking that it's probably going to make sense to try to do that. We are currently looking into SRF funding sources to see if we can move forward in that way. Otherwise, we might have to come back and figure out another way. Old South Road, Richmond. I don't know if anyone has driven down there, but it looks fabulous. The final pave is done. The line markings went down yesterday and today, and it looks so good. It's so clear now in terms of how you maneuver those turning lanes. And they are doing the final sidewalk and shoulder work this week, and that should be wrapped up by Friday. So that was only 3 years maybe in the works, but that's really exciting that that's done, or it will be done by the end of the week. There is a potential sidewalk blocking on New Whale Street, right adjacent to the bulk fuel tank farm. And that is to have a buffer for the tank dismantling. That is still in the permitting process, but it's something that we're anticipating hopefully happening this fall. So that is going to be very exciting. They are working with the fire chief to make sure that everything is ready to go and able to be able to move forward with that. And then weekly house moves and modular moves. It is going to be a very busy fall. In addition to all these closures, we also have house moves and modular moves. And I have approximately 2 to 4 moves scheduled every single week through the end of the year. So it's going to be really, really busy. And I actually haven't had this many house moves in the queue, maybe for a couple of years. It's been modulars mostly, so it's going to be interesting. And then, street blockings that are due to private jobs that require road openings and blockings. But that will just give you a glimpse of what we've got going on, if anyone has any questions. Matt?
Yeah, I have a quick first comment is I'm really glad to see the PFAS group looking at the extension at the airport. That's really, really smart and good news. And my question really was about North Liberty and how come the drainage wasn't taken care of? Was that just fall through the cracks, or what was because it would make so much sense to do it all at once.
It would make so much sense to do all at once. And that was originally the plan, which is my understanding. For some reason, the drainage part of it was taken out, and it was going to be planned on its own. And I don't believe that that has happened. So we need to regroup and try to figure out how to get that taken care of. But it is something that's right at the front of my to-do list to try to get that taken care of.
I drive it fairly often. The base coat is pretty solid at this point. So if you can, if you can get it planned and leave the base coat, it's not a major thoroughfare. So who knows?
I did get an email today with a couple of photos where the transition marks are from where because a couple of areas did get final paving that weren't going to be impacted by drainage, but then a couple of areas did not. So the transition from the base coat to the final pave sections is a bump. But again, I don't think that we want to move forward with a final pave without absolutely knowing what's going to happen with the drainage, because we don't want to waste the money.
Erica, we used to do the house moves on Wednesdays. Is that something that used to happen a long time ago when there was only 3 or 4 a year?
Actually, so what we try to do with real house moves, excuse me, is move them on Tuesdays.
Okay.
Every house move has to have a rain date, just in case something happens. So and the utilities do not like to do moves on Mondays. So that's usually out. That's a great modular move day. So we do a Tuesday rain move date with a rain date of Wednesday, or a Thursday move date with a rain date of Friday.
And I'm sure the outreach is, we always do the best we can, but sometimes it falls through the cracks. And I wonder if something like a daybreak or a current type messaging out there for house moves and stuff would help. I don't know.
Yep, potentially.
Any questions from comments from the board? Okay.
Thank you.
I don't see any follow-ups, comments for prior select board meetings. Is there
Sorry,
any-
Jason. Chief Murphy was going to make an announcement about the 9/11.
Oh,
Remember.
sorry. Yes. Excuse me. Go ahead, Chief.
Evening all, just to let everybody know in the public that we will be having a remembrance of the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Events in New York, Shanksville, and Arlington at the Pentagon. This Saturday here at the station, public is welcome to attend, and we ask that if they do to arrive sometime before 9:45 and park either in the lot at 2 Fairgrounds or the Public Safety Building main entrance lot there.
Thank you, Chief. So it starts at 10, get there at 9:45.
Yeah, we're going to be starting a little bit before 10.
Okay,
9:45 is a good time to get there at least.
thank you. Okay, on to public comment for things that aren't on the agenda. See one hand up, Mr. Greeter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had a question about the project discussion that was just going on. I know it was primarily roads, multiple departments. We're just looking to see the rebuilding of the Walter Barrett Pier was put off last year. It was under budgeted, if I understand it correctly. Funds were approved, the contract has been awarded, and looking to see if that rebuilding is going to be going forward this fall, since the use of the dock will be unusable for the scallopers and winter boaters. So just looking for some clarification on that. Thank you.
Erica?
I do not know the answer to that, but I can get it, and I will respond to Mr. Greeter via email if that's okay.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Bill. Any other comments from the public that is not on the agenda today? I don't see any hands coming up. So we'll move on to the COVID-19 update. Roberto, you taking that one right off the bat? Thank you.
Yes, so we're in pretty good shape. We're moving forward with COVID as we go. The last 7-day positivity rate is below 2% now. So that's really good, which means it's starting to drop off. One other thing, and the BioBot sewer report from last week is showing between 1 and 5 cases per day based on the sewage flow, and that has been shown to be correct. What we are seeing is we still see a pretty significant demand for PCR testing based on travel, going back to school, things like that. But in general, not much of a symptomatic demand, which is really good. One of the things that we did see, if you look at the BioBot report graph, is the proof is in in the data there. Masks work. And we saw a precipitous drop off approximately 2 weeks after the mask order was put into place. So we are still seeing a good amount of people wearing masks out there. We are seeing the cases slow down. So what we're looking at is we'll be reevaluating as normal at the monthly Board of Health meeting on the I should have had that up already. Sorry, on the 16th, next Thursday. So what we're looking at is just a general reevaluation and seeing where we stand. from what I see right now, we're still in good shape, but we do still want to see where we are on the post-Labor Day surge that we saw last year, if we were to pay attention to the data. If we were to look at this as at the cyclical nature of a airborne illness, especially one transported by droplet, as we see the temperatures drop and people start going indoors, you will see the cases go up. So we'll be monitoring that as we go. We're keeping an eye on the Delta variant. A lot of the breakthrough cases we're seeing was most likely to Delta. However, we are also still watching and keeping an eye on both Lambda variant and the Mu variant, which is now another variant of interest through the WHO. Both of them are known to have breakthrough infections, just like Delta. So we are paying attention. One of the things that I'll throw over to Jericho shortly is when we're talking about vaccines and one of the things that I'm gonna make sure Jericho connects on is the difference between a booster and a third dose, because they're not the same thing. So what you're hearing right now is about third doses for immunocompromised individuals. And then let me see what else. Right now, the state of Massachusetts is not entertaining a COVID passport situation like we're seeing in New York, but we are monitoring the situation. Cases are still up nationally. We're at some of the highest case incidence rates than we have ever seen in any of the COVIDs across the country. But in New England, in the Northeast in general, cases are down due to a high vaccination rate. And with that, I'll throw it over to Jericho, and then we'll answer questions.
So yeah, we're looking, I'll just very briefly mention the research I've been doing on the next sets of potential variants coming our way, and then I'll discuss the third doses and boosters and how that relates to vaccination. I touched on it briefly earlier, but it never hurts to say it again. So briefly, we're looking at Lambda and Mu. Both have been detected on American soil, but in low numbers. Both have outcompeted other variants in their locales, which means that they have increased virulence, they spread easier, or they're better able to circumvent natural immunity and or vaccine-based immunity. Both of them are even more mutated than Delta is, so they're verging on a new virus, although they don't show any sign of penetrating the hospitalization and death protection from currently deployed vaccines. So that's good news. With respect to third doses in general, the rule of thumb is all boosters are third doses, but not all third doses are boosters. So basically, a booster is designed to provoke an immune response to combat waning immunity as time goes by. The booster shots are aimed just at everybody who's got an mRNA vaccine, and they're intended to go at 8 months after your second dose. So that would put most of Nantucket in the November, December area for their booster shot. Now, the third doses that the town is administering now are only for immunocompromised people, and there's a set list of conditions and medications that are authorizing their use. We are screening 2 levels of screening for people who are looking for immunocompromised doses, and because immunocompromised people are at higher risk for exposure, we don't want them at the walk-in clinic where there will definitely be unvaccinated people. So if you are looking for a third dose, if you're looking for a booster and you have no immunocompromised medical state, then keep waiting. It'll be a month or 2 before we have that going, which should still give us about a month before the deadline of getting everyone done. And then if you have a medical condition which impacts your immune system, you'll go to the town vaccine resources webpage, enroll in the survey there, then we'll reach out to you for a secondary screening, and then we'll schedule you for a separate appointment. I believe that's just about everything on that, yeah? Yeah.
Thank you, Jericho and Roberto. Any questions from the board? Melissa?
Thanks so much. Through you, Jason, to Roberto or Jericho. Do we have any data on how many of the COVID infections over the past month or so have been in people under 21, school-age children? I'm just curious how that's going in our community.
I don't have that exactly in front of me right now. I will need to answer that and get that back to you. Tune in on the Board of Health. Tune into the Board of Health meeting next week, and I'll have that number ready.
Awesome.
That's a very good point.
And then in general, we've had significant numbers of people during the summer. These are all anecdotal. There's no data on this, but we did have a number of positive cases amongst local people in daycare and childhood education sort of settings. And then if you want a sort of preview of what this might look like in a couple months, take a look at the schools that got started or states where schools got started earlier. We're looking at some of them where there's zero mask mandate, so not as bad as it's going to be here, but there are some of them where 2/3 of the school or more are either infected or quarantined. So
Great.
It is a serious concern.
Thank you. And I imagine that would weigh heavily on any decision about continuing a mask order. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Melissa. I had one question, Roberto. How is Massachusetts doing with hospitalizations and beds? Because we're connected to off-island beds.
We're actually doing very well. The state of Massachusetts has at least 1 dose vaccination rate of all eligible adults of approximately a little bit over 70%. The fully vaccinated is about 54 to 55% right now, which is higher than most of the states in the union. So what we're seeing is Massachusetts hospitals, and connected as well to Rhode Island hospitals, New Hampshire hospitals, Vermont and Maine, New England in general, Connecticut as well, that the hospital systems are not as taxed as we're seeing in Texas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, due to just the sheer amount of vaccinations that we have. And then also one of the other parts that we're seeing is those who are vaccinated and those who are unvaccinated tend to cluster in their relative groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other comments or questions? Roberto and Jericho, well, we got him here. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that update. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's any new business that I know of. Moving on, approval of minutes of August 18th, approval of payroll warrants, and approval of treasury warrants. Is there a motion?
Jason, on the minutes real quick. On the 18th, I sent this to, yeah, you can be. I sent this to Erica earlier, and my comments real quick. Selectman Fee explained he had 3 employees on bikes hit by cars over the summer and two close misses in the last week, and advised the town to examine ways to address the issue and make next summer safer. That was one. And the other was when I was talking about personnel and hiring, and focus on personnel and hiring and regular select board meetings like the board and staff have done successfully with departmental financial reporting. Those are the 2 changes. I wanted to clarify what I had said, and those are my adjusted changes if you'll accept them.
Make a motion to approve as amended.
The minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll do all of them and with the minutes as amended. Sorry.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. It passes 4-0. Thank you, Matt. Pending contracts. I think we have a couple comments on some of those, Erica.
So sorry, Melissa, did your motion also included approving 2 and 3, the warrants?
Yep.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
sorry,
sorry about
Erica. I said it in slang. I
No,
said
that's
all of
2, 3,
that.
4. That's totally fine.
Okay.
We've got, we have Karen McCumber here to talk about the Rock Solid grant, and Chief Murphy to talk about the grant that the fire department is getting, in case anybody has any questions. So I'll, if it's okay, pass it over to Karen.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I wanted to share with you that the town funds that were allocated for the last round of Rock Solid, which was approximately 150,000, we were able to distribute nearly all of those funds through the last session. There's just under 3,000 that was unspent. We were able to help 26 different businesses, restaurants, retail, wellness providers, inns, business service providers with grants of $2,500 to $10,000. So please understand that really did make a huge impact here in the economy and really helped a lot of our businesses. I apologize. Of course, my dog will be barking now. And what we are asking for here would be some continued support in the amount of $50,000 for this fall. That would be matching funds to go with remains funding of 50,000. So that would give us over 100,000 again for this round, which we would look to distribute under the same rules as we had for the previous round. So existing businesses that are located here on Nantucket, chamber members as well as non-chamber members, so open to any business here, and looking to help them continue to recover from COVID, as well as to innovate and become more resilient so that moving forward, they're all in a better position to succeed.
Thank you, Karen. Any comments or questions for Karen on that?
Quick question. Yeah, Karen, do you ask them to prove need to show, last year or the year before versus current?
Correct. In the application, we do ask for financial information, so gross and net profit. And then we do make sure that they provide receipts for everything and do report to us the impact it has had.
Anybody else? Thank you. We have a hand up. Sarah Ellis, you have a comment on the Rock Solid?
I was just going to ask a question if that was okay, sir.
Yeah, on the Rock Solid
Yes.
contract, sure.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious, in terms of identifying them as Nantucket businesses, are you identifying the business owners as being residents of Nantucket as well?
What we do ask for is information about where the company is incorporated, when they were founded. They must have a major presence here on Nantucket and/or headquarters. So in some cases, it is feasible that someone who is here part of the year but owns a business here that is run most of the year would be eligible. We first and foremost try and make sure that we're taking care of our own here.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. It's a great program. Thanks for all your work on that and everybody who put the time into it.
And does anybody have any questions for Chief Murphy about that, the grant for the portable and mobile radios? Are you good?
Well, I can just say, like, when I saw this, I thought, wow. I mean, Chief, was this a lot of work? Did they put you through a ton of hoops for something like this?
The process is a competitive grant process.
Okay.
This was my second year applying for this grant for this purpose. And it was a lot of rewrites and a lot of changes from the first one. So they asked to go through several layers in order to be approved. And we were very fortunate. Actually, the Cape and Islands was very fortunate. There was a lot of departments who received different varying amounts, but ourselves in Harwich did very well on the radio portions. So we were lucky.
Congratulations. Nice work.
Thank you.
Okay. The board, do you have any other comments or questions on the pending contracts? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Christy. All those in favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Any contracts passed unanimously, 4-0. Okay, we're going to move over to a consent item. Erica, you're going to walk us through that, or is there just a motion on those?
Sure. So there's two gifts, one for the fire department for safe grant initiatives and one for the planning and land use services, $10,000 from Act Natural, which is pursuant to their planning board special permit. And the recommended motion is just to accept the gifts for the designated purposes with thanks.
Make that motion.
Second.
Thank you for the second, Melissa. All those in favor by roll call, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Those gifts are accepted. Thank you. On to citizen department request. Nantucket Preservation Trust request for approval of historic preservation restrictions to be held by Nantucket Preservation Trust. For A is Nantucket Island School of Design, 23 to 25 Walnut Road. I think Mary is here to walk us through that. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Yes, these were the restrictions that the select board was to look at. I think I presented them back in April. NISDA 2325 Walnut Road, the Seaview Dairy Farm is the current site of NISDA. It's one of the island's last surviving dairy farms, and this is NISDA received a Community Preservation Act funding for the preservation of the farm in 2018. So this is a restriction. That's a requirement of the CPA funding, and then the other restriction is 79 Orange Street.
Sorry, should we do these separately since Matt has to recuse from item B?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be better.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary. We'll take a motion on A on the NISDA.
And can I just note too, if you move approval, just please make sure that you find that the restriction is in the public interest.
Make a motion to approve because it is in the public interest.
Second.
Whatever Erica said.
Thank you. Seconded by Matt. All those in favor by roll call, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes 4-0. Now on to 79 Orange Street. Matt is going to recuse.
Great. 79 Orange Street. This is it was formerly a grocery store, Anton Sylvia's grocery store. Currently, it's where Flock is. It's where the Nantucket Bake Shop used to be. The facade on the structure was salvaged from a sister building, which was the former Monument grocery store at 106 Main Street. That building was demolished in 2001. There was a public outcry. Luckily, Matt and Sheila were able to reunite that facade with the sister building. The dimensions of the two buildings were identical. So this is a preservation restriction that the owners want to place on the building to ensure that there is this remaining small commercial building in this neighborhood. This is the way that it would have looked back when it was constructed, and it would be for the public good to have this preservation restriction on the building.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions or comments for Mary? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve because it's in the public interest.
Second.
We're getting good at this. Okay, all the roll call, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes 3-0. Thank you, Mary. Okay, on to the next one. Nantucket Land Council request for re-execution of a January 8, 2020 select board approval and execution of conservation restrictions to be held by the Land Council for portions of 16 Madui Creek Road. Okay.
You got it.
I always want to say Medallic. Any questions for Emily? She's here. Any updates you want to take us through?
Sure, I'm happy to just briefly state this is obviously out at the Madui Creeks and adjacent to Pulpus Harbor. It's a restriction that, as you heard, the board actually approved at the beginning of 2020. Unfortunately, there were a few delays, and then when the pandemic hit, things kind of got just postponed and put on hold. And by the time we got around to trying to get it signed off on by the state, we had fallen outside of their 12-month window. So This is one that's required as part of Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program under the Endangered Species Act for the redevelopment of the property because of the northern harrier habitat out there. And then certainly it also helps to preserve the floodplain and storage capacity during storms around Pulpus Harbor and water quality. So definitely fulfills the public benefit mission. Oh, and I guess I could also just mention, it's actually only on a 4.5 acre portion of the entire property, which is over 30 acres. So it was really specifically around preserving the northern harrier habitat out there at the site.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Any questions? Emily? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to reapprove this. It's in the public interest.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes 4-0. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, on to public hearings. We're going to open the public hearing to consider the revocation of private shellfish aquaculture license held by Ted Lambrick at 10 Trotters Lane. Jeff Carlson here is going to walk us through. Jeff, are you here with us? Hey, Jeff.
Evening, everybody. Sorry for that. I had a little issue with getting my camera on and function there. It's one of those days for everyone, it seems like. So I know this is our second kind of go around since May, and then we had an update in July on this as well, which spawned this. So we've been working with Mr. Lambrick now for the better part of about 18 months on a potential revocation. Just as a reminder to everybody, the way that the shellfish regulations read for a private aquaculture license requires that those leases be worked at least once every 3 years. We're to the point with Mr. Lambrick where we've well exceeded that amount. We went to SHAB. SHAB has recommended the revocation of the license, and that came before you guys again. And you granted Mr. Lambrick some extensions. I know in your pack today, through the DMF and the shellfish warden, I know there was a confiscation of some oysters that were being improperly handled as part of this. But our most recent inspection, there's still a pretty significant amount of gear that appears to be on the bottom and not in full working order at this point. So unfortunately, I think we're still supportive of the revocation for just the inactivity as the regulations require. And then kind of our additional concerns of those handling issues. And plus the fact that we don't really feel that, well, Mr. Lambrick has definitely been efforting, that the progress that's been made is sufficient, and that someone else should be given the opportunity to permit and work those leases as needed.
Any questions from the board before we go over to Mr. Lambrick? Okay. Ted, you can speak if you'd like.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I have been since the last time that I was here with this on this meeting. I've been working on that, getting the gear up and marking corners as was requested. I've got seed out. I've had only 4 days that I wasn't either working on the site, on the boat, or on repairing gear. So I have been full bore on it the whole time. I'm not going to dispute the fact that it was left unworked for a couple of years. I've got a whole book full of excuses for that, which I really don't care to go through again. But at any rate, I've gone full bore on it and have gear up. The state requires that I do not put any shell stock back onto the lease area. So it's all got to be brought up, cleaned, and hauled off, put into driveways and so forth and so on. It's a procedure. It's not easy. I never thought it was going to be easy, but it takes time. And I can't do any more than I've done physically. I've been straight out on it and will continue to.
Thank you, Ted. Any questions or comments from the board? Matt?
Yeah, I'm having trouble squaring up what was in our packet and what Mr. Lambrick is saying. I mean, I guess this is a question for Jeff. Jeff, is he out there all but 4 days? And, if so, what, what am I missing?
No, and we won't dispute it. Mr. Lambert has definitely been putting some work in up on the leases. We've documented them up there. We've seen him. There was obviously the one handling issue. The state has very strict regulations for oyster handling, for Vibrio protocol, and for other other bacterial concerns. Obviously, anytime shellfish are involved, there's high food safety issues because shellfish can provide a lot of shellfish-borne illnesses and can make people very sick. So they're very strict about that, and that confiscation issue kind of related around that handling. I think for us, it's just more of a sign of it sat for so long that the work is so substantial that to get those leases back into compliance is really difficult, and it takes a lot of time. And I think that's just kind of indicative of our position that the leases weren't handled within the guidelines, weren't handled within the rules and restrictions that were set up. And I think that's what led us to SHAB and the discussions there, and have pursued revocation through our normal path to give someone else an opportunity who will hopefully be able to work those leases in compliance. And I think that's kind of the crux of the issue for us. And I know Mr. Lambert and I will probably agree to disagree on the effort and the status, but I think our position is pretty sound that we feel that the requirement of working has not been met, that the leases aren't in compliance, and while they've been efforted to be brought back into compliance, that given the time that SHAB was granting him, and then plus what this board was generous enough to grant, that the work that's been completed to this point hasn't been sufficient to get them back into compliance, and we're still pursuing revocation.
Thank you, Jeff.
I guess then when would Jeff, when would SHAB be happy? When do they need it in compliance, and what does compliance mean?
So I think compliance in this case obviously is gear all in working order, not on the bottom or grown into the bottom to some degree, or going to cause some damage to remove from the bottom. Obviously following all of the appropriate handling protocols for everything properly marked, and then the gear and the leases being worked on in kind of the perpetuity of the lease in compliance. And I think that's what everyone is striving for. That's what our other leaseholders that are up there currently do. I mean, they're up there every day, working as long as weather allows, and working in compliance. And I think in fairness to those guys too, we try to make sure that the rules are followed by everyone equally and applied fairly.
And then when does it have to be done? I know it wasn't done. I know it, but he's saying he's working. Is he just working too slow? So therefore he's too slow, so someone else who's faster should go in? Or well, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair question, man. I think the tough part with answering that question is, that time frame. And I know we were in front of SHAB, and SHAB, I mean, this process started, like I said, 18 months ago, where notice went on, and 18 months later, we still haven't completed cleanup. I know there was a boat involved, and getting work done and getting prep ready and doing those things. But just given the extreme amount of time to do it, plus the extra 100 days that were granted here, to see the amount of work that's been done, I just don't think we feel that work is sufficient to demonstrate that those leases are going to be worked in compliance.
Melissa?
Thanks so much. And thank you for including the previous minutes, because it is hard to remember. But I think, Jason, that we had agreed that substantial progress would be made and determined, I'm sure in partnership with Mr. Carlson, and the gear would be removed by now, was my understanding of the commitment that was made to this board. And what I'm understanding is that commitment was not met. And so I have really significant concerns of continuing to continue this. I appreciate Shab's position that this has happened over 18 months. I feel like this board, since we first heard this in May, has been very fair. It's been 4 months and we're not getting closer. And so, or at least we've not completed it. Even if work has been done on it, it's not satisfactory. So I have concerns about continuing this conversation in this delay and permitting the gear to stay in the water. That's where I'm thinking right now.
Thank you, Melissa. Christy?
Thank you. I'm on a similar page as Melissa. And when we met, I think it was 60 days ago and discussed this, we had asked both Ted and Jeff if 60 days was enough time to get things in order, and both were assured that it was. And so I think, at that point, we all were a little hesitant to extend, and then we did, given that we thought it would be cleaned up by now. And so I think there's other people on the wait list, and this is something that Shab and the Department of Natural Resources has been working on for 18 months. And I know that there's been some COVID delays and other health delays, but I think that we've given this a lot of time and effort and town resources to try to bring this into compliance. And I think that it's time that we remove the license.
Thank you, Christy. So I'm in agreement with Christy and Melissa on this. I was ready to revoke it last time, but I listened to everybody and it made sense to give it more time. Ted, you have your hand up?
Yeah, in defense of this whole thing, a matter of the confiscation of the oysters, I had oysters on the boat, bags that were 95% dead shell, and we're sorting them out. I am not harvesting any oysters for sale at this point. In the past, I've always done that. Apparently, it wasn't listed by the state on my permit that I could cull the oysters off-site. I have since made that change with the state, and I am permitted to do it now off-site. And as far as the progress goes, I was under the understanding that I do my best to make substantial progress. Well, I don't think there's any person on earth that could have done any more, considering the amount of work that it takes to get the gear up and everything else. I've got good gear in the water that's got good seed in the water. I've got 50,000 oysters, seed oysters at a cost of $4,000 out, set. I've got the sight corners set. I'm bringing up all the lines. There's a good number of lines and moorings, and I'm continuing to keep pulling the gear off the bottom. But it takes time. It's not easy. It's a lot of cleaning the gear, a lot of culling everything out, and then getting it out. And I just keep whittling away at it. I can't move any faster. I don't think 5 people could move any faster. It's just one thing at a time. You can only do one portion of it at a time. It's a process. I've got all this huge investment. I mean, all this gear, equipment, and knowledge, and everything else going. And I've been setting up for it. I have been working, like you say, for the last 18 months. Shab's concern was the progress on the boat. I went as fast as I could to do the repairs on the boat. Those repairs would not have even started if I was allowed to start pulling up that gear last spring when I wanted to. But when I was told I could not touch anything on the lease, I said, you may as well reconfigure the boat and make it work a little bit better for you. And that's what I did. But had I been allowed to touch that stuff last year, I had people hired. I paid people all the way through the December to stand around and watch me work on a boat, pretty much, as I had some labor help and all that, but I would have had all those people there helping me. And that gear would have been out of the water last year, easily. I just needed to work on it. And that's what I'm doing now. I got it, I finally got the darn vessel back in, and I've been banging away at it since that point in time. And I can't do anything more than I can. but that's going to be my income, you know?
Thank you, Ted. Jeff, did you, anything on this? Any thoughts on what he just said there at the end?
No, and I understand what Mr. Lambert's saying. Again, this isn't a process that we start lightly by any means. And the way the regulations are set up is it requires, 3 years of not doing anything really at a minimum to even start that process. And that's what led us to the process to begin with a delay, to date of an additional 18 months. So we're sneaking up on the 5-year mark where we really haven't seen production. And I understand, and trust me, this is not a process that we take lightly, or a process that we enjoy doing, because we do not. But the rules that we're tasked to enforce and the way they're written are what we put in front of SHAB and what we bring to you guys to have these hearing processes. And we feel that, while some effort's been put in, at this point, it's not sufficient to have a lease that's in good working order and has been carried forward in good working order. And unfortunately, that still leads us to the fact that we're recommending for this for revocation, in a kind of our continued pattern of following the regulations and providing a fair, equal playing field to all the folks that are involved that do follow the rules and compliance.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts or comments from the board? This is a public hearing, so I don't think anybody has raised their hand, but the public can weigh in on this. Matt?
Yeah, I'm struggling a bit. I believe that he's been out there working hard. He's sunburned, and the hair's changed color, and he's sunburned. I'm jealous. You've been on the water, but probably not if I know how much work you're doing. So I'm torn. I think the effort has been there to the extent of it. Here's a question, Jeff. In some of this, I feel like there's other people chomping at the bit. Are there allowed to be sort of partnerships? Can 2 people work a site, or is there anything like that could happen here that could get get some more horsepower, get some more people involved, and and not just be either, not just have one choice? Or is this site large enough to parcel out to 2 different people to keep, I'm just trying to think of, is there a way to do this?
Certainly. I mean, obviously the leases can be subdivided into whatever portion the board sees fit to award. Many of these leases, obviously a lot of the guys that are up there working, have employees, and those employees are able to go up and work. The only real requirement for, someone to go up and work those leases, the state requires that those individuals have a specific, essentially a shellfish transaction or shellfish ID card. So if someone goes up there, if the EPO goes up or the shellfish warden goes up, they're able to identify that it's someone that's supposed to and is allowed to be working on the lease, and not someone trying to, poach oysters or vandalize gear or do those things to identify those folks. But there's nothing in the leases that precludes someone from taking on a partner to help do the work or do those things. And again, that's a lease in this case that's been relatively unchanged since the time it was originally awarded. Most of the other leaseholders have employees and have people that go up and work. But again, that's a decision that each leaseholder has to make as far as whatever their business model necessitates and whatever revenues they're able to generate to pay those employees, I would guess.
Melissa?
Thanks so much, Jason. I guess, again, just rereading the minutes, it was the criteria that was sort of established was that a full setup for harvest next season would be established by this time so that it could be worked for 2022. Is that accomplished?
Yes.
I guess I'm asking Jeff. I'm sorry.
I know Mr. Lambert has represented that he has gear in the water that's holding oysters, which is true, but I think we also feel that there's still a substantial amount of gear that's been on the bottom for multiple years that's not in compliance and not in good working order.
Okay.
Ted, go ahead.
That gear is coming up. I had to put seed down, and it's going to be ready next year in order to generate some kind of income so I can hire some kind of help. But all that gear is coming up. It's just one thing at a time. And I can't do it all at once. Right now I'm to the point of back total focus on just getting gear off the bottom. I mean, that's where I'm at. And that lease is in working order. It couldn't be any more in working order. The big hitch that I see that Jeff is at is the fact that gear's on the bottom and it's coming up. It's my responsibility no matter what. Even if you take everything away from me, I still have to get all that gear off the bottom. It's through the feds and the state as well. It's my responsibility to get it up. So no matter what, it's coming up. It's coming out.
Okay, Matt, and we'll go to the public.
Yeah, here's a question. What happens, if we revoke it, the gear's coming up, what happens with the stuff that's just been set? Is that all required to come up too?
All of the gears is in the possession of Mr. Lambert. So if the license is revoked, Mr. Lambert he'll be the one that's, responsible for its removal. There are procedures if he wants to try to transfer it to someone else. There's permitting that can go through to deal with that. Again, I think our concern is that a lot of the gear that's there is so far gone that the amount of effort that's there and potential damage that could go on is problematic. And it's, been allowed to sit. And I think with such a long period of time where it to sit before, while we're hearing that there's stuff in the water that may be a year away, it may be 2 years away. I know a lot of times we see these things take, up to, 2 full seasons to get to size for harvest. That I'm not sure that our history shows that we're gonna get there or see that result, even though we're being told now we have, because history would tell us that we haven't. And I know there are lots of extenuating circumstances, and I understand that. But again, I think we feel that it's time for someone else to have an opportunity to, work a lease in compliance and in full compliance with the rules and regulations of the town and leases.
Could we go to Sarah Ellis, public?
Hello. Hey.
Okay.
Sorry, Sarah just put her hand down before I let
Okay.
her.
Go ahead, Ted.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I'm following the right procedure. And I just lost my train of thought. I'm doing everything possible to have it in full compliance. Everything possible, following every rule, every regulation. There is no possible way in the next 2 years that anybody is going to have that lease in a working order. They're going to have to purchase the gear. They're going to have to set up the whole operation, everything else. By next spring, it should be going full bore in smooth operation without having to deal with the gear. I mean, I've got a lot of gear that's being repaired as I go. A lot of it I don't have to repair right away. I can do it over the winter. I've got enough gear to take care of the seed that's in the water for this season, and then next year I'll be putting in more seed. And it's in a situation where it's moving, it's functioning, it's moving forward. It's frustrating because I don't think you can make it go any faster.
Thank you, Ted. Well, I'm going to try to wrap this up here. Melissa?
Thanks so much, Jason. I guess the question is, and through you to Mr. Lambrecht, I share your frustration because it sounds like we're at odds. The equipment is still not removed, and that's the most important thing to have happen. And you've had leniency from us because we understand, and I think those of us on the board who have advocated for leniency understand this is your livelihood and want to support that. However, it feels disrespectful on the same hand to hear you ask for that kind of leniency and patience, but also not reciprocate with some sense of urgency to get that equipment removed. And it's dangerous and it needs to come out. And to say that it's all going to happen on your time frame feels disrespectful to the community and the rest of the leaseholders. So I can't entertain not revoking this license unless there's a really firm commitment, which on 2 different occasions we've heard a commitment to, and then come to this table again with no result. When will that equipment be removed? What is your time frame for that? Because it has not happened in any of the subsequent timeframes over the past 1.5 years that have been extended to you. So I don't feel a sense of confidence that it will happen. I'm sorry to say that.
Melissa, did you want to answer from Ted on that, or was that a?
I would love to understand what the plan is to remove the equipment. If this was extended yet again, when can we expect, because we were told 60 days ago that it could be now, the equipment would be removed, and it's not. So
Go ahead, Ted, then we'll go to the public.
Pardon me, I didn't say all of it would be removed. I said I'd have a good portion of it going and up. It will come out no matter what. I can't have any more commitment. I've been straight out at it. I mean, I can't commit anybody else to it, I don't think, but it's coming up. My plan and hope is to have everything out of the water by winter that is not actually in production. That's what my hope is, but it takes time. You can't raise 20 cages in a day. It takes at least 4 hours to go through getting it up, sorting stuff out, transferring all the garbage, and per cage. I mean that's just a guess, but I can only go so fast. I don't think there's any human being that could go any faster. I don't think that if I just threw my hands and walked away from it, there's anybody out there that could get the stuff up. And there it would lie on the bottom, creating a problem. Number one, it's not really a hazard where it sits. It's in deep enough water that it's not a hazard to navigation. It's not destroying the environment. And the fact is, I've put back more seed into the water of quahog seed coming off of that stuff and cleaning it. And in the process of cleaning it, there's more wildlife on it than any place else. I don't understand what the hazard is.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Ted, I'm gonna go to the public here really quick. Sarah Ellis, and we'll go to Peter Brace. This is a public hearing.
Thank you so much. I guess I just have a question, or I have a comment and a question, but my question is, for how many years has this gentleman held this license until he fell into non-compliance?
Okay, well, let's give me that, or that's the question. We'll answer that. And what's the comment, Sarah?
I just find that the idea of non-compliance and the frustration with that is it's just a strange time given the board's reaction to the Sconset Bluff project and their conflict with the Concom. It seems like this gentleman is sort of like a micro version of that, and perhaps his intentions are good, and perhaps the time for neighborliness has passed, but I certainly hope not.
Thank you, Sarah. Jeff, you answer her question?
Certainly. So again, to reiterate, we initiated this process after, 3 years of non-working, and it's been additional, year and a half since that point. And that was, pretty clearly documented for us. But, we really feel that it's really been about 5 years since we've really seen substantial activity on that lease site.
That's not true.
Thank you, Jeff. Christy, and then we'll go to Peter Brace.
Sorry, just to clarify, I think Sarah's question was, how long was he in compliance? How long has he had this lease for prior to the last 5 years?
Ooh. Off the top of my head, sorry, I'd have to pull the lease up. I want to say Mr. Lambrick has held this initial lease for 3 years and then received the renewal. So we're probably at 7 or 8 years that Mr. Lambrick has held those leases.
Thank you.
5 out of the 8 have been not in compliance.
Where's this 5 coming from?
Thank you. Can we go to Peter Brace?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just been listening to the conversation the whole time. Just to want to make sure you guys all had the letter that we sent you, that we basically explained that we worked with Mr. Lambrecht from the middle of September 15th to the middle of April, tried to help him along and made sure that he was at every meeting so we could get updates. It was a long process getting his boat up. We had heard from one of our members an offer to help get the gear up. You know, we kind of understand how the board might be on the fence, but we still stand by the revocation. But it seems like there's maybe a window, there's maybe a chance here for a different way to go. I don't know. I'm just kind of hearing a little hesitancy in the select board. And I'm also hearing Ted say that he is working as hard as he can to get the gear up, and maybe he's going to have it up by winter. But it would be really helpful, Ted, if you could tell us how much of the gear you have up now, a percentage, something that you pulled up since you were told by the select board, here you have this extra time and get going and show real progress. Well, tell us how much you pulled up. I think that's what people, you know, at least I would like to hear, considering we wrote a letter to advise the select board to revoke your license. You know, let's hear what your progress is, your actual tangible progress.
Thank you, Peter. If everybody could go through me instead of talking to each other, but thank you, Peter, for that question. Ted, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I would say approximately 30% of the gear has been pulled off the bottom and cleaned. And not all of it is in, because the process of cleaning, when I pull the cages up, I pressure wash them off. The shell stock is full of mud and everything else. I refloat the cage in there in tough shape, there's no doubt, or reset it. The mud goes off when I pull them up again and then sort the shell out and take it off. I would say approximately 30% of all those cages are up or in the process of being up. I could explain, I can sit here and go through the whole process of doing it. What I do is I go in and I pull the cage that's been down for a good period of time. I bring it up, I clean it off, and then I bring it to another section and then reset it, and then go do another one like that. And when I come back, it's especially difficult because of the southwest breeze is predominant here, which pushes you on the beach, which can be dangerous. So the tough part is getting the cages up and cleaned off. When the wind's blowing southwest, I pick up the cages that have already been cleaned off, sort through the shell, bring them in, because it's easy to do that. It's easy just to go in, grab a cage, sort it out, bring it in. So that's an approximation of the process. I would say, yes, approximately 30% of it's been up.
Thank you, Ted. Peter, did you have any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, it was 7 months for us working on this, and we agonized over it. You know, Ted is one of our fishermen. He's one of our constituents. We represent him. We are supposed to be there for him. And the process of revocation, this is the second one I've gone through, is hellish, because you see what he's going through. He had a surgery that he had to deal with. Of course, he had housing issues that he had to deal with. Those are hardships that a lot of us have had to deal with. So the letter that I wrote on behalf of our board, it didn't come lightly. You know, and everything that Jeff Carlson is saying is it's correct. He's applying the law as it works for an oysterman, and it's his job to do that, and we are supporting him. But I just want to say that it was hard to do that. You know, it wasn't a case of somebody doing malicious destruction or, you know, dragging through there and causing problems or fighting with other oystermen. It wasn't anything like that. It took us a long time to get to the point where we are now. Just want you to know that what our process was.
Thank you, Peter, for that background. That's helpful. I'm going to close this public hearing here pretty soon. Is there any other questions for the board? Erica, we would close the public hearing and make a decision, correct? Unless we continue.
Sorry, if you're ready to close it, yes.
Right, okay. Christy?
Thank you. I just have a question for Jeff. If we revoke the license, everything that's currently still at the bottom needs to be removed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, that is correct. Sorry, I was on mute there.
Matt?
Yeah, question for Ted. How, of the lease site, what percentage of it are you using or do you plan to use?
I plan to use all of it, but I just need to get everything rolling again. I'm rebuilding. I'm not producing stock that's sellable right now. Well, the oysters that I'm bringing up that are alive are sellable in the fall after the beaver season through the state. I've spoken with people through the state and they can help me with that. But my intent was to use the entire lease. It's a rebuilding process. You know, obviously I failed at some point, and there's a whole myriad of reasons that's been explained to a number of times, and I don't.
No, and I'll just, sorry to cut you off, Ted, but the reason I'm asking is, can we revoke half a lease? Can we revoke 3/4 of a lease? I mean, I would like to see, because I would hate to see you have to pull out, seed oyster that just went in. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I'd like to see you continue and clean this up. And but I'm looking at probably I'm looking at likelihood of revocation. Is there something in between? I guess this would be a Jeff question. Is there something in between, Jeff, or is it, all or nothing right now?
I think from our standpoint, and to kind of go with how we represent it to Shab as well, I think we're looking at moving on and either revoking or not.
All right, Melissa, go ahead.
Just wasting my life.
Thanks, Jason. I heard, and I want to thank Peter very much, Peter Brace, for his comments. It was really helpful to hear from him. And I agree with him that this is very difficult decision. And I think that's why this board has taken its time and its consideration. And to hear that 30% of the equipment is up, I think there has to be, if we were to make a motion to continue this again and to preserve this license, there has to be an earnest commitment. And I feel like we've set these firm deadlines and they keep getting skipped. I know I said that earlier, but to hear that only 30% is pulled up and you're working as hard as you can, what is a reasonable expectation for having that gear removed? 100%. Is it another 60 days? Is it 90 days? Is it by the end of the year? I think I need to hear, for me to consider that, what a reasonable expectation is. No excuses. Last chance. Get the gear out of the water. What's that time frame look like?
Go ahead, Ted.
90 days. If I haven't got it up in 90 days, I may as well just give it all up.
Then, Mr. Chair, I would say, with all due respect to Shab and to Jeff, that we would continue this public hearing for another 90 days. And if the equipment is not fully pulled up within those 90 days, then it's a revocation of the license. It's a third, fourth chance given all of the things that we've been going on with Shab. But in the spirit of understanding that this has been a very unusual year for businesses, and at the same meeting in which we've just granted a $50,000 grant of town funds to other businesses, I feel compelled to give it one more shot. But the 90 days would be a firm commitment on my end. So I make that motion for the board to entertain, to continue the hearing. Thank you, Erica. I know you're going to fix that.
I was just gonna say, the public hearing's still open, so, sorry, yes, to continue. Never mind.
Yeah, yes. So continue for 90 days. And if the gear is not 100% pulled up, then it would be a commitment to revoke the license.
There's a second for discussion.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? Jeff, is there anything else? Well, Melissa, would you like Jeff to weigh in on anything else you'd like to see, or would you like just to vote on that?
I would love for that if there is additional criteria that are useful aside from the gear being pulled up.
Jeff?
I mean, I think, thinking about the criteria for something like this, obviously, you need all the gear that's down removed and anything that's put back in good working order, regular inspections. I mean, I think our concern is, and I hear everything, and I totally understand, right? This is a hard decision and something that's there, but we're coming into October pretty rapidly here, and weather's going to start to go, and we're going to be looking at December. I mean, we look at most of these guys for getting their gear down by the early part of December, the guys that are actually out there being stowed away for the winter. I mean, we're coming into the time of year where working out there is not really as feasible. And I think our concern is that this is just going to perpetuate. And I think that's why our hope was to have it all up by even the first meeting. And now we've gone through is, I say it with a really heavy heart to say it is, I just don't have a lot of faith that it's going to get up and be in compliance. I mean, you hear about how we're cleaning off clams and things that are there. It's been there so long. It's created like a little artificial reef on its own and sustaining life. I mean, that's where we come from. And that's why the requirement of 3 years of not working is there. And, you're allowed to, take a year off in there for real life sometimes. That I just feel like we just keep moving the goalposts and never really getting to somewhere in fairness to all parties involved.
Jeff,
I'm sorry to sound frustrated with it, but it's been a long haul. I mean, we've been doing this for a year and a half. And I get your position, and I don't envy, I don't have to vote. I don't envy you guys having to do it, but at some point, we got to take steps to move forward. And if it's a set date, I think it's 100% compliance without any questions. All gear removed. Anything that's in is properly stowed. I think any other issues or violations in between now and then for any other handling procedures or something, it's got to be 100%. And that's got to be the only way.
Christy, you had your hand up?
I was just going to make a comment that when this came before us in July, we had extended to 60 days, given that if we revoked it, it would give somebody time to put gear in for next season. And so extending it to December, I think, takes that away. And Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but that would then prevent anything from being able to happen next season.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, sure. I think if the revocation were to occur, we'd obviously would proceed on to the wait list that we hold for people who have been interested in this. And through the winter, they would be able to start moving through the permitting process with hopes that maybe there'd be an opportunity, depending on how fast things can get permitted or not, that they may be able to get gear in the spring and then and hopefully get started themselves. But sometimes permitting time windows are not always up to the individuals. Sometimes it can be faster or slower.
So what I'm hearing you say, Jeff, is that this 90 days wouldn't prevent somebody from getting started over the winter if we revoked it in December.
I mean, it would be a 90-day delay in someone starting a permitting process.
Permitting. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Ready for Erica?
Sorry, just back to Melissa's motion about 90 days, because we have to, if we do continue the meeting, the hearing, it needs to be a date certain. So 90 days is approximately December 7th. So I would say we would bring it back on December 8th, if that works. That would be our time to review it.
If that date should be a part of the motion, I thank you for that, Erica.
Sure. So it'd be continued to December 8th.
Okay, and are we clear on what we're, on the criteria? So there's no other gray areas?
100% of the gear pulled up, correct? That's the criteria.
Is there anything else in there, Jeff? Like, anything that is in there has to be a working condition if there is anything there? Did I hear that?
I think the way to do it would be 100% of all gear that's currently on the bottom removed. Any gear that is in the water that is working order needs to be, I would say, inspected and verified that it's in working order by the shellfish constable. And then I think I would also include that any handling errors or failure to meet any other criteria related to the lease or, local or state regulations triggers a failure as well. I mean, I think we've already seen one handling issue. I would hate to see another one again. It's food.
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
No, I said it's food, and we take handling very seriously. The state takes handling oysters very seriously, and there are very strict handling procedures that those gentlemen have.
So I want to try to move this on. Are you okay with that?
I accept those. Thank you.
Those three things. Erica, did you get those three?
Okay, so the motion would be to continue the public hearing until December 8th. And all the gear that's on the bottom will have to be up by that time. Any gear set in the water needs to be inspected by the shellfish warden, and no handling issues. If there's a handling issue, that would automatically result in revocation, correct?
Okay. Was, are you okay with that?
Yes, thank
that's
you.
The motion. Okay, and that's the motion.
That's the motion.
Christy?
I think Matt seconded.
Oh, sorry,
it.
Matt, you second that? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Just a quick question, Jeff. How many handling issues a year do you get per person? Is there none, or is there?
So the way that works right now is we do, we're required by the Division of Marine Fisheries to do a minimum of weekly inspections of all of those guys. The warden goes up, JC spends a great deal of time checking those guys. Those guys have really strict procedures for logging and tagging and icing and shading and timing. I mean, they get a Vibrio handbook, and the state issues those out and provides the information to those guys. We fortunately don't have a lot of issues with handling. The guys that are up there right now, really try hard to do it. We try our best to work with those guys to correct any issues that we see. We fortunately haven't had any major issues out here, but again, it's a big concern. We've had issues on the Cape where there have been infections out of ground that have caused, obviously illness, hospitalization in a couple cases, but it's something that, those guys take really seriously because it's their livelihood. If someone gets sick on an oyster from Nantucket, no one's buying oysters from Nantucket, and everyone goes out of business. So they take it very seriously, and it's something that our warden really works very hard to make sure that those guys are really doing a good job. And I think I commend them all for really putting the effort in.
Okay. Erica, do you need a motion to continue this?
Melissa made the motion and Matt seconded.
Okay. Ready for a vote? Yep. Okay. All those in favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Matt Fee?
Aye.
Chrissy Ferrantella?
No.
Jason, aye.
Yeah, 3-1. So Ted, you have until December 8th.
Thank you.
If that would have been a split vote, what would have happened?
If you would have had a split vote, then the motion would have died.
And we just would have went back to the drawing board.
And you could go back to the drawing board.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ted.
No problem. Thank you guys for the time.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you again to Peter.
Thank you,
Okay.
folks.
We're moving on to the town manager's report. We have FY 2021 fourth quarter end of year budget reports for the Airport Enterprise Fund. We have Noah Tarberg here. I know.
Noah, I'll go ahead and share my screen for you. Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Erica. So for fiscal year 21, concluding the fourth quarter, we have the following financial highlights. Total revenue is up 3% or just over 500,000 over fiscal year 2020. The largest part of this is the result of a decrease that we made to the fuel revolver cap, where we reduced the cap from 5.2 million to $4 million. We did this based on projections at the time related to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of decreasing the cap, it increases the amount of fuel revenue that flows over into our operating budget. This excess was 1.6 million, which went into our operating revenue. Overall, for the year, we saw an increase of $433,000 in fuel sales revenue. This was partially offset by a reduction in the passenger facility charge, which was down $302,000, and fee income, which was down $378,000 over last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Offsetting those decreases, of course, were increases in FBO sales of $574,000 over fiscal year 20, as well as rental income, mostly associated with new leases and revised leases for the lease of vacant land, which was up $290,000. I mentioned that fee income was down $378,000. Most of these fee revenue categories are operation and employment driven. Total operations and employments are down 12% and 33% respectively over this time last year. For our expenses, total expense overall is down 31% or 3.8 million over fiscal year 20. The main driver of this is the decrease in payroll expenses due to reimbursements we received from the CARES Act. Total payroll is down 75% or 3.6 million over this time last year. And the airport has submitted and been reimbursed a total of just over $3.4 million in CARES Act reimbursements. And again, just as a reminder, this CARES Act revenue has been used and reflected in the budget as offsetting expenses, not accruing to revenue. So the revenue that's being shown is true revenue. On the profit and loss statement, since I reviewed the previous categories, I was just going to skip to the bottom before concluding my report. We're showing a surplus for the year of just over $6.5 million. This was an atypical year due to the amount of funding that we received through COVID. Added to our previous retained earnings, our projected balance will be $6.8 million. We've identified this funding is going to the local share of projects or airport-sponsored projects that are AIP grants reimbursed, such as employee housing, fuel farm rehab, ongoing PFAS expenses, and we feel we've really worked well with finance departments and Brian Turvitt to avoid or reduce our reliance on long-term debt. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Noah? Yeah, I'm excited for your next quarter to see how that went.
I am too. Thank you.
Yeah. So that surplus is the CARES Act, right? Pulling down the expenses. That was the main cause of that. No.
Correct. It's the largest single cause.
Yeah. Great. Anything else? All right. Thanks for tagging along all that. No, I appreciate it. Okay, we're on to select board reports, comments. First one is preliminary discussion regarding potential select board sponsored articles for May 2nd, 2022 annual town meeting. Christine, I put this on here because we thought was going to be a shorter meeting, but you know what happens whenever you think it's going to be a shorter meeting. Not looking for any decisions or any motions, just have a short or long discussion on what any select board sponsored articles that we would want on the annual town meeting this year. I just kind of wanted to give us to start that conversation earlier versus trying to do it in October or November when we're getting pushed up against a time frame. Because really by November, end of November, we should know ideally where we want to go. Maybe it doesn't have to be perfectly written in stone. Is that right, Erica? Kind of by November, we need to have an idea, even though we can still put something in January.
You have time up until January, but in terms of trying to get town council to vet them and make sure they're properly written, and also for if anything needs capital, planning review or FinCom review, it's good to have it in as soon as you can.
Okay. Anybody want to start? Any thoughts? Nothing? Matt?
Well, the one we talked about this after last town meeting, and one of the discussions I had was what are we, is how do we move forward on, it's not necessarily a short-term rental, but how do we look at sort of leveling the playing field for workers and year-round residents? And, how do we put together, this is the questions I was asking right after last town meeting, how do we analyze that? How, where does, what part of the government will, examine that with us or for us? And, is it through planning? And then we had a meeting with planning and, and maybe Christy could fill us in on where, where they may be going. But I think that there's a lot of impacts that we identified through the course of Article 90 last spring that the town identified. And unfortunately, it became so polarized that we didn't really sort of dig into some of those issues. And I believe those issues are substantial and real. I believe there's been a commodification of this an island that we need to find a way to, rein in some manner. And it's not just short-term rentals. So the question is, how do we put in place, something to start working on this? And, I was hopeful that we went to planning and that we'd come up with something. My worry is that what will come out of planning is, well, we have to clean up, and make it legal. In which case, make short-term rentals legal, which case we'll do that. And there'll be a long grandfathering period. And then we'll be, we're behind it for 10, 15, 20 years. And so, I worry that will be the focus. And I think the focus should be wider and should be looking at, all those impacts. And so, to me, it's critical, some of these issues that we're dealing with, the lack of housing for employees for the town, the lack of housing for employees for businesses. It's, sort of the sustainability of our service economy is in jeopardy right now because there's nobody here to service. And I'm worried it's not going to be better next year. And I don't think that, Affordable Housing Trust Fund and any amount of just throwing money at it is going to solve it. I think we need to be looking under every rock. So some of it might be town meeting, but some of it might be regulations changes or policy changes. And I just, I'm opening it up to the board to say, how do we do that? How do we ensure we don't put that off and that we don't either go back to town meeting with a citizens article or something else that's divisive, but how do we put together, a work group that's representative of the community to start, sort of knocking away at this?
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, there's a scenario where I think you alluded to, well, I was at that planning board, select board meeting. It pretty much said, we're going to look at redefine short-term rentals because it's in charter, it's not well defined. We're going to define it and allow it to happen. But there was nothing else coming, at least in that meeting, coming from the planning board. So if you have a citizen warrant article coming from, say, an Act Now, and then we come in with something or we don't, so are there going to be 2 or 3 or 4 different articles all fighting? So if we work together, does the select board and planning board come up with something and define things and work with other entities? So I'm with you. I don't really know what that answer is, but I can tell you what I don't want is 3 or 4 articles kind of saying the same thing and everybody's confused, really confused, and have to pick and choose, and then kind of have to have a PhD just to figure that out. I always fall on the side of working. I want to work with the planning board and even work with entities like Act Now and Affordable Housing Trust and pretty much that group that went to the Vineyard, right? Which was town staff, right? Planning, everybody was there. So some type of group. Do we have enough time? 3 months to come up with something? I think we do. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I would say we probably do, but who's going to convene the group? Who's going to be involved in the group? What is the goal of the group? I mean, I think, those things, and we're not going to solve it tonight, but we need to, and maybe and maybe Christy can tell us, where the NPDDC is or the planning board is, but, I want to make, I would like to work with the planning board too. And I think that would be great. To come jointly with something would be amazing. But I get worried that we're under the intent to quote unquote make us legal or clean this up, we're going to exclude other options and not be able to get those back. So and the other thing is we have to be cognizant of the Styler decision. And so we've got, so are we gonna sort of clean it up to conform with that in the future, or conform with that in some areas, or not at all? Those are we have those discussions, deserve to be had. Those are policy discussions that deserve to be had at this board multiple times, and at the planning board multiple times before we get to town meeting. And I worry that we're going to be last minute, like we often are, as a town, that we're going to be last minute and ill prepared, and it's going to be a mess again. So I'm bringing it up now, so maybe we can avoid that, or avoid that as much as possible.
Thank you, Matt. Christy?
Thank you. I was just going to say that NPDC had our last meeting canceled, so we haven't had a chance to review since the planning board meeting. But what was discussed at the planning board was Andrew and his staff going back to review, and as Jason said, kind of clean it up. So I don't think there's been any progress on forming some sort of work group that we had all discussed kind of pre and post town meeting. But maybe that's something that we can work on this fall.
I see Brooke Moore's hand up. Go to Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have grave concern that the unfettered growth of the short-term rental industry is going to have community changing impacts that we're already seeing and are only going to grow. The reality is that rentals have been a part of our economy forever, since we've been a tourist economy. They have changed in nature since the advent of online platforms and the ease by which people can rent their properties. The investor market is growing in short-term rentals nationally and locally. Short-term rentals aren't the only cause of our housing crisis, but I think that now is the time to have the conversation about what our future looks like if we don't look at this industry and figure out a way to manage its growth over time. Because this summer taught us one thing: the experience of our seasonal visitors is dictated by adequate workforce to meet their needs when they're here. And we had an experience today this summer that looked like a vision into our future if we don't solve our housing problem and manage the relative availability of staff and employees versus the number of visitors who are coming. And that's a huge conversation. And I think it's incumbent on this board to make sure that conversation happens and happens before we go to town meeting and codify what exists and its capacity to grow forever before it's too late. And that's just my 2 cents as a housing advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Any comments on that?
I wish I had said it as well as Brooke just said it, because that was said very well.
Yeah. We go to Sarah Ellis.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add to what Brooke said in the sense that I feel like a lot of the people that I know who have been struggling with this even more intense than usual Nantucket real estate situation are people who aren't necessarily low income as defined by the state or the nation and or even the town. And the idea that, as we know, all of our civil servants, teachers, etc., all of our infrastructure people need housing, but people that might have worked 60 hours a week for $30 a day, who have been reaching and working and this and that, there is no longer that opportunity for them either. And I just applaud the efforts of the community, and I think that people are clever. And if we listen to a lot of them, we come up with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Rick Atherton.
Jason, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think we ought to just be clear. My recollection, and others can comment, of the end of the joint meeting where your board met with the planning board was that an article would be prepared for town meeting that would, in effect, make clear that short-term rentals, right down to the minute, were authorized under our bylaws. And unless this board steps up and says, no, that's not necessarily what we want, it seemed to me the conclusion of that meeting, that's where the planning director was instructed to head. Maybe I'm mistaken, but if you go back and listen to the meeting, I think that's what occurred. So action on your part to do something different is called for. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That's exactly what I heard. And I think that's Matt, that's what you're saying you heard at that meeting. And Christy, same there. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard, but I also, I've heard it's not what a couple members of the MPDC and planning board heard. They think something else is going to happen. At least I've been told that. So I think it's still not clear, so I think that has to be sort of, maybe it's, that has to be sorted, but, I'll just speak for myself. I think doing that without really understanding what that means could, for the future of the island could be catastrophic. Walter Barnaky, I was fortunate to meet with him, sort of near sort of the end of his life. And one of the mistakes that he told me he made was, having, and he was advising them not to do in Newburyport, Mass, was to have every house a rental home, every house a hotel, because he felt that would lead to the loss of a community. He thought that would lead to to the loss of our economy and our community, which is what people are coming out for. So he was advising other communities to not follow follow what we were doing. So I hope that we as a board will stand up and say, we don't want to follow that. We need to find another path. I'm not saying I know what the path is, but I know the direction we're going now is not leading into a very good outcome. So, I don't know, we've got to find a way to see what our other choices might be.
So Matt, thinking about that meeting, I did hear that, what I just said and Rick referred to. But I also thought at the time as I didn't necessarily think it was a blanket definition just to allow short-term rentals in residential areas. I thought it was defined. To me, that could mean a lot of things. It could be a huge article where we could have input in and kind of do some of the things that, you know, the Act Now article, it didn't pass, but talked to a lot of people, they like parts of it. And so there might be a way to put all that in together. It's kind of where I'm exploring, asking, being curious about. Christy?
Thank you. I'm wondering if it's worth kind of having another joint meeting with the planning board, or we had a lot of facilitated workshops lately, if that's something that we could do, and maybe we could talk with Andrew and Leslie about getting that set up sooner rather than later.
It's a good idea. Brooke Moore has her hand up.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up on a couple of things. To Ms. Ellis, there are efforts being made to work on home ownership opportunities for folks that I would describe as sort of middle income, 150% AMI to 200% AMI. So there's hope, and there are being efforts made in that area, recognizing that that's also a dire need. I think the hamster wheel we are on is we have now a financial model for investing in seasonal homes in Nantucket and making them profitable in a way that was never really available before. And so long as we allow that to continue unregulated, the appetite for homes by investors, and whether that's a seasonal person who uses it part of the time, rents it part of the time, or someone who's strictly doing short-term rentals, means that neighborhoods that have never been have been traditionally year-round are seeing sales to this short-term rental profit model. And so long as that market continues to grow, the number of people we need to service that industry grows. And this community and our taxpayers will be chasing our tail forever to create enough housing for the people that's attainable for the people who need to be that workforce. And at some point we have to figure out what is the balance, what is the number of workers it takes to support, you know, whether it's X number of overnights in season that are strictly just seasonal. That kind of analysis, if we could find a way to do it, would be very interesting to me, because it would inform how much year-round housing we actually really need. And so you know, we'll be investing millions and millions of dollars if the market continues to grow at you know, or to expand in the way that it has been. That's it.
Thank you, Brooke. If you guys are okay, I was going to move on to some other things that I think we know will probably be on there, if that's all right. We can always come back to this if you want. Island home design, that's going to be a major, that's going to be a big number. The senior center feasibility study, I think having both of those on the town meeting and ballot would show that we're serious about the senior center being there. That's one of the issues of what's going to be, if we move it, what's going to go there. This would show, even though we all know we're intended to do that, but we create a little more trust in the community that the senior center is going to go there. So those two things I think should go on. I know that the school has a big plan, a big ask, got moved up from a couple of years ago. So all the playing fields and that, you know, redeveloping all of that from a track to, they're going to come on maybe in a couple weeks or in October and present to us, the school committee, next week. I went to it last week, but that's going to be 16, 17, 18 million, right around there. I know it's going to come from the school, but that's something to think about. What are some other big projects that are coming in there? Greenhouse building, there might be something with that we'd want to put on. And I didn't know if there's any big road projects that we're thinking about putting on. I don't know if anybody had anything in mind. Not having a DPW director to ask, like, actually, sorry, transportation planner to ask, where's the Milestone Rotary is, like, is that coming down the line? Is that something that's coming up for an ask this year? I don't think it is, but those are things that were on my radar for town meeting. Christy?
Thanks. Just some of my kind of initial thoughts. I had gone back to our strategic plan and was kind of looking through that and trying to think of some bigger policy things that maybe we want to at least start discussing. Maybe not for this town meeting, but potential future town meetings. One of them is paid parking downtown. I know there was a citizen warrant article in 2020 that paid parking needs to go to town meeting now. So if that's something that the board is still committed to in our strategic plan, then that's something that we need to start considering if we want that to be on this year's town meeting. Given timing, I don't think that would result in paid parking for next summer, but perhaps the summer after. And then second, I bring this up a lot and it kind of gets grazed over. So just bringing it up one more time, that we focus a lot on our elder care and senior citizens and looking at some sort of child care program or support. The town of Wellfleet has had a program since 2015 that raised, I think, about $100,000 each year and goes towards parents to help with licensing, payments of licensed child care programs for 3 and 4-year-olds. And just an idea to maybe bring forward to us as we're talking about feasibility studies. Is that something that we could also put forward as a town? I think Eastham did something along not just childcare, but nutrition assistance and things to help kind of prepare people for kindergarten and making sure that everyone's kind of starting at a level playing field. And so I just kind of wanted to bring those two subjects up, kind of thinking bigger picture and policy decisions.
Christy, I like the, sorry, Matt, was it Eastham? What was the first one? The first town?
Wellfleet.
Wellfleet, because to build another a facility like a small Friends, like that's really, really expensive. But to help people, to incentivize them with a license in their own existing home, that's a really smart way of doing it. Takes the burden off, the small Friends and the Rising Tides and some of those. I think that's interesting to look at. And probably, I'd be curious what it would take to truly incentivize, right? Because you probably have to have certain things at that house to have a license, right? So there would be maybe structural cost, or I'd like to find out more about that because I feel like $100,000 could go a long way.
Yeah, I like where you're going. What Wellfleet did was payments to parents to help the cost of them setting to a licensed. But I like that idea as well, to get more licensed programs in the community, because that's something that we're lacking as well.
Sorry, I went the other. So yeah, we could do both.
Yeah, it was an incentive to get children out of unsafe conditions and into licensed programs.
So, yeah, I guess I went there because there's a capacity issue. Like we could give parents who don't have kids in childcare, but there's nowhere to put them. They're just, small Friends is a waiting list. I don't know, hundreds of families, depending on the time of year. Thank you. Keep bringing that up, Christy.
I agree, Christy, that the problem I have as someone who is, hiring or attempting to hire and housing and et cetera, is a lot of all these things take employees. They take, personnel, and we didn't have personnel to mow the lawns this year. The town didn't have personnel to do, we didn't have as many summer specials as usual. We haven't had a transportation planner for 2 years. So I think adding anything right now until I think if I was saying what is sort of what is top priority for the town itself, the top priority is figuring out how to house employees and obtain employees and retain them. And I think everything else is kind of is nice to have, but we have absolute needs. And I think that's, and I don't know. So when we talk about the strategic plan, that's where I think we need to be going there. And it's, you know, and we need to really focus in on some of those things. And I don't know, you know, so I think a lot of this sounds great in theory, but who's going to do it? You know, where are they going to live and how are they going to do it? And so that, you know, so I would love to really focus on, you know, how are we going to hire for the town? Where are we going to house people for the town? How are we going to get, you know, how are we going to bargain that and have it allowed, you know, and really, you know, start to put in place whatever is necessary to be able to operate the island. You know, what I heard from a lot of people this summer, you know, visitors and residents, was that everything was a wait. Everything was long. You couldn't get in. It was too long. It was a wait. Everything was, you know, sort of, we were trying to put 10 pounds of manure in a 5-pound bucket, or, you know, and I think that was, you know, we've got to solve that. We've got to figure out how to, you know, how to solve that equation. And I'm not, you know, and what things can we do as a government and, you know, as a government to sort of solve it for the government, and what can we, and how can we make it easier for the private sector to solve it for themselves? I mean, those are the things that I really, and a lot of this stuff sounds great, but there's going to be nobody, you know, none of us left to build it for, you know?
I think we can do both, Matt. I think housing is our #1 priority, and we're doing it. It's off to a great start, gaining ground. But I think we can do that and talk about, you know, childcare, right? Because you can have housing, you can have secure housing, but they have nowhere to put your kid. And so I think we could do both, and that's kind of, to me, is a low-hanging fruit, Christy. We just haven't done it yet, so it seems maybe insurmountable. But I like that you looked at some of those different Wellfleet and Eastham examples. Well, any other thoughts on this? We exhausted the first round of ideas for annual town meeting. All right. Go ahead, Matt.
One other comment. Read my. I sent a email out to an article out today about transportation, paid parking, and read the part about PPDS, paid parking derangement syndrome. It's pretty entertaining, but it's what we have to. It's an affliction that we're going to have to break if we're going to solve this. But it's you know, the head that Donald Shoup is the, you know, is the guru on this, and it's a great article about sort of his vision, and it's worth reading.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any committee reports? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Erica?
Sorry, before you all go, I will need in-person signatures this week, please, either tomorrow or Friday.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Okay, see y'all in the morning.